My friends at Easy Cater are workplace catering pros, helping you find food for everything from daily employee meals to staff meetings and special events. Visit easycater.com/leaderassistant to find out more.
Hi, this is Claire Haye. Today's leadership quote comes from Jay Danzy. Your smile is your logo, your personality, your business card. How you leave others feeling is your trademark.
The Leader Assistant podcast exists to encourage and challenge assistants to become confident, game-changing leader assistants.
The Leader Assistant podcast is exclusively brought to you by Goody, which provides effortless gifting for all occasions. If you're tired of sending tacky, impersonal business gifts, then you should definitely check out Goody. My friends at Goody offer a collection of hundreds of curated brands like Levain Bakery, Therabody, Milk Bar, and Ember mugs. With Goody, if your recipient doesn't like your gift, they can swap it out for one they do like. You can find perfect gifts for any occasion, whether it's work anniversaries, birthdays, new hire onboarding, or company swag. It's free to start gifting, and you get a $20 credit when you sign up. Also, be sure to mention the Leader Assistant podcast when signing up, and Goody will add an extra $10 credit to your account. So go to leaderassistant.com/goody to disrupt the inefficiencies in your team's gifting strategy. Again, that's leaderassistant.com/goody. Hey friends, thanks for tuning in to the Leader Assistant podcast. Welcome to episode 201. You can check out the show notes at leaderassistant.com/201, leaderassistant.com/201. Today, I'm excited to be speaking with Claire Haye. Claire works at Amazon UK as a assistant to general manager. And Claire, how's it going today?
Yeah, really well, thank you.
What part of the UK do you live in?
So I live in the East Midlands, so bang in the middle of England, on the east coast. Working in the sort of Derbyshire, Nottinghamshire, Leicestershire area.
And are you from that area?
No, I'm originally from the south of the UK. So I'm from the south coast, from a place called Weymouth in Dorset. So I moved up exactly 10 years ago today.
Nice. And tell us a little bit about, before we jump into your career, about you personally. Are you a dog person? Are you a cat person? Are you a hobby person? What's a little bit about Claire?
Yeah, probably my biggest thing is music. So I love music. I go to lots of festivals, lots of live bands, big names, sort of local bands. I really love to go out and listen to live music, which since COVID, I'm now sort of trying to get to as many gigs as I can because there were so many cancelled and not on. Yeah,
what's one of the best live music performances you've ever been to?
I think one of the most energetic was Queen, but with Adam Lampart. Sadly, I never saw Freddie. Queen with Adam Lampart was an experience, definitely.
Wow, that's great. Well, all right. Tell us about professionally then. What brought you into the administrative professional assistant world? How'd you end up as an assistant? And tell us a little bit about your story.
Okay. So when I left sixth form college at 18, I decided I didn't want to go to university. I didn't think I could afford it at the time. None of my family had ever gone to university, so it was time to find a job. My first, I'd been working retail since I was 13, but my first kind of adult job was as an office assistant, very old-fashioned company. The men sat up on the first floor, or the ladies sat on the ground floor. Wow. That was quite an experience. And then from there, I moved into local authority, so working for public sector. through various roles, so admin assistant, senior training administrator, secretary, office manager. And then I moved up north and took on back to a PA role. And again, then that went through several changes. At one point, I was a facilities manager, and then I got made redundant. So I took that time to kind of refocus what I wanted, what I liked about the roles I'd had and what I didn't. And that's when I went for my current role at Amazon.
Nice. What's been your favorite part about being an assistant?
For me, it's the variety. So I could literally, you never know what that one-line email is going to put in your day that you weren't expecting. So you can have a lovely to-do list, and then somebody's, a few sentences, suddenly your whole day spins on its axis, and you're doing stuff you never imagined you could. And I think as well for me, it's the being able to help other people reach their goals. So I think I'm very much of the opinion that I'm there to support the people in my team so that they can do what they do really well.
Yeah, well said. Well said. What about your least favorite part?
My least favorite part is probably expenses. I just hate doing expenses.
Amen to that.
I know. I'm like, right, every week I'm just going to do them a week at a time, chip away at it, and then it gets to the end of the month and I'm like, I need to sort out all these receipts.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. Well, let's talk a little bit about a few of the topics that you mentioned you'd like to chat about. First one being owning your career. What has that meant to you? What does that mean to you to own your career?
So I think for me, a lot of the roles I've had have sort of happened to me. So there's been a restructure often. So particularly in the UK, in the public service world, in your councils and your local authority, love a restructure sort of every 2-3 years. So I found myself going into roles that were getting further and further removed from what I actually went in that business to do and the bits of the role that I love. As I say, at one point I went from a PA to an office manager to a facilities manager. And at that stage, I was looking after everything from electricity contracts, mobile phone contracts, fleets of vehicles, things that just weren't really my bag. They weren't really using my skill set. So I'm very much an advocate of knowing what you want from a role, what you're good at, where your superpowers are, and going after that, and actually not being afraid to say, this isn't the role for me, or this isn't the company for me, and proactively looking. I think very often we can end up in roles we don't like or just don't suit us, but we keep thinking it's going to change. And I think sometimes you've just got to be brave and take that step.
Tell us about a time that you were brave and you did take that step, and tell us how that turned out. Because I know a lot of people listening are like, oh, I don't know if I don't want to risk it,
Yeah, so I think for me, it started really small. So I did a basic SWOT analysis. So what were my strengths? What were my weaknesses? Where were my opportunities in the business I was in at the time? I think sometimes people think, oh, you have to eradicate every single weakness you've got, and that's never going to happen. We're humans. We're not robots. You can't sort of delete that coding and make yourself something you're not. So I think it's finding the roles that play to your strengths, and that your weaknesses don't have an impact on them, rather than trying to make yourself the expert in every single area. And one of the things I did was I looked at where did I want to get to, and what were my gaps in knowledge, or what were my gaps in education. And I got my employer at the time to fund my degree so that I could keep working full time, because we've all got bills to pay. And get my degree that I knew I would need going forward for the career I wanted, even though it wouldn't necessarily be with that company.
Nice. What was the degree?
So business management.
Okay. Awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about mentoring. What's been your experience as a mentee or as a mentor?
Yeah, so I've been both. So I've been a mentee within the business I've worked in, but I've also mentored others in my business, in my peer group, and outside of my organization. So it's something I'm really passionate about. I think there's always a bit of a gray area between what's a coach and what's a mentor. I think for me, I see mentoring as a bit more hands-on, assisting somebody to achieve a goal. So giving ideas, helping them work through problems, sharing my expertise of what I've done in my sort of 20 plus years and what's worked and what hasn't worked. And really helping them achieve a particular goal or project.
Awesome. What would you recommend as far as those listening that would, maybe they want to be a mentor or they want to find somebody to mentor them? Do you see it as more of a casual, informal setup originally, or is it more like, hey, hey, let's have a chat, or hey, be my mentor?
Yeah, I think it depends on where you work. I think a lot of workplaces tend to have mentoring schemes. Also, particular forums can have mentoring schemes. So I think there are lots of places where you can reach out for mentors. But it may be a colleague you've previously worked with. It may be a friend. It may be somebody that actually you're, for instance, following on LinkedIn or a social media platform, and you just really like what they do and how they do it. So what can start as a chat can kind of evolve into mentoring. So I think don't ever be afraid to reach out to somebody and ask and say, look, this is the situation I'm in. This is where I'm trying to get to. Any pointers, and that can evolve a relationship into a mentoring. I've also found, so after I was made redundant, I did a course called I Am Remarkable, which is a Google initiative.
Yeah.
And I'm now an I Am Remarkable facilitator. So I've facilitated about 22 sessions, about just over 200 people I've facilitated the I Am Remarkable program for. And I find that although it's only a couple of hours, it's almost like a mini mentoring session because people are sharing lots with you. They're talking to each other. They're getting advice from each other. And it creates groups that then continue to stay in touch with one another.
What's maybe an example? Do you do these in small groups? Do you do them one-on-one?
So we tend to do it in groups of about 8 to 10. There is an element of discussion and sharing, and I think if you go too small, you don't get that. But again, if you go too big, then not everybody will have their say, and it can be too intimidating for some people if you suddenly go on to something and there's like 20 people there and you're expected to share. Mm-hmm. So yeah, around sort of 8 to 12 people is a good number.
Nice. And another topic that was interesting, you said build your personal brand. What do you mean by personal brand? And what do you mean by building your personal brand? Because personal brand can kind of be a lot of different things these days. Like, you got to have your social media profile and you got to this, but sometimes it can just mean how you present yourself. So what do you mean by that?
So I think for me, my personal brand, there's sort of two elements. There is the social media side. So there's looking at, do the things I follow fit with my values, fit with my goals? Am I cutting out things that don't serve me? So, is there anything social media wise that actually it has a negative impact on me whenever, maybe a particular person's post, they grate me or they can, they're not good for you. So it's cutting some of that out and actually, knowing what motivates you and what you feel confident engaging in. So, for instance, through LinkedIn, I've had a real sort of sort through of who I'm linked to, who I follow, looking at how often I post, what am I posting. And through that, I've reached out to our East Midlands PA forum, and I'm now recently joined their committee for their PA awards next year, which I don't think I would have done if I hadn't have been doing that work on social media and looking around at who locally to link in with. And then I think the second part is around your personal brand in your day-to-day interactions with the people you work with. Sort of as my quote said, that kind of how you leave people feeling is your trademark. So what we do things like 360-degree feedback. So how do you leave people feeling? What are your skills? What do you want to be the subject matter expert in?
Yeah, that's great. And then how has that helped you? How's your personal brand helped you with just professionally with your relationship with your executives and your colleagues, and maybe even career path wise, like when you go and do your performance review and you ask for a raise and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, so I think your personal brand does help. I think in terms of personally, it's opened doors for me, like I say, with the East Midlands PA Forum. So it's got me into that, and I'm going to be working with a group of amazing people locally who all work in the executive support field that I would never have otherwise known about. I would never have touched base with. And I think as well, it helps you to reinforce what your worth is and what your skill set is. I think very often, particularly in sort of PA executive assistant roles, we're often the only person in our building or sometimes our business that does that job. And we're very good at doing things under the radar. We're not always very good at banging our drum and shouting about what we do. So sometimes the people you're working with, the only thing they see or they know about your role is what they physically see you doing. And there's probably 80% of your job that no one knows you do. But if you stop doing it, they'd all suddenly realize. So I think it's about talking about your achievements and keeping track of those achievements, because time goes so quickly. We forget what we did. We forget what we got done and what we achieved. And often it's not until appraisal time or, when you're going for an interview that suddenly you have to think of, well, what have I done? What's my experiences? So I think keeping regular track of them and not being afraid to put your hand up for things that fit your skill set, but other people might not realize you have that skill set.
Yeah, I like how you said that. I think it's important for us all to keep track, even document the accomplishments we've had personally and professionally. Even just writing down like, all right, what are we good at? What do we bring to the table? And just building your personal brand is often directly tied to your confidence. You're building your confidence as well. So that's awesome. Okay, let's talk about emotional intelligence. So you mentioned, you're a strong advocate that, alongside the hard skills of email management and task management and communication and all the fun things that we do as assistants, we definitely need emotional intelligence. And I've written about this in my book as well. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what's emotional intelligence and how do you cultivate and develop your emotional intelligence.
Yeah. I love the book, by the way. And I think
Thank you.
The term emotional intelligence, I think, is quite a new thing. It's certainly not something I remember hearing anything about towards the start of my career. I think it's always been around the technical skills. So, can you do your expenses? Can you manage your inbox? But I think often, as a as a sole role in a building or a business, you can only achieve by getting stakeholders on board. And that needs a slightly different skill set. You need to be able to negotiate. You need to be able to sometimes have difficult conversations, but also actually get people on board. It's stakeholder management. And that takes a different skill set than, say, doing your expenses. So I think there's a lot of things that you learn through experience, but again, with the mentoring, by sharing those experiences, you can help other people. So how to influence others, how to listen actively and with empathy. I think there's a lot of people skills that, in our executive assistant PA roles, we need to get things done because we can't do everything solely on our own.
Yeah. Well, what's one thing that you would tell, if you go back in time and tell your younger, new, fresh assistant career self, what's one thing you would tell yourself?
That no isn't a bad word sometimes. I think I say a reforming people pleaser, so I'm trying to be less. But I think by nature, a lot of us in this sector tend to be people pleasers. It fits in with our need to help others. And I think sometimes I've tied myself up in knots with that by saying yes to this person, yes to that person. They all merrily go on their way, and suddenly I've got 20 projects that I need to deliver by 9 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Right.
I think by saying no, I can own what I take responsibility for, and I'm not having to tame other people's chaos. So very often, I think in certainly in my career experience in professional services, other people's urgencies, other people's emergencies tend to be because they've left something so long. So they probably had 2 or 3 weeks when they got that task. They've left it, and now suddenly with 48 hours to go, it's an emergency and it's your problem. So I think I would certainly advocate for my younger self to have said no more, and to have drilled down a little bit on, okay, we'll get this done, but let's learn from this and let's not repeat this. So why did it go to the wire? Why did it not happen, when it should have happened?
Well said. Good advice. And I know I spoke with an assistant the other day who has been an assistant for about 3 months. And then I spoke with one, I think it was last week, that's been an assistant for about 3 weeks. So hopefully they'll listen and take heed to your advice. It's great tips. Claire, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing a little bit about your journey. I know it's late in the UK right now, and so I appreciate you taking time to do this. Where's the best place for people to reach out if they want to say hi and connect with you?
So the platform I'm probably most active on is LinkedIn. So that would be the best place to reach out to me.
Awesome. Well, I will put your LinkedIn URL in the show notes at leaderassistant.com/201, leaderassistant.com/201. Claire, thanks again. Best of luck to you. And I really appreciate you reaching out and taking a risk to be on the show. And I'm glad it worked out.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Please review on Apple Podcasts. GoBulls.com